We're going off book today, and I mean that quite literally. You know how the premise of the video series was to deep dive into the mundane items in the player's handbook? Well, we're throwing that idea in the trash as we move away from the PHB and into the DMG. That's right, the Dungeon Master's Guide. There are items in there too. Now, we're not done with the player's handbook, don't worry. I'm just excited about this one. Hello everyone, I'm Tony, your 6-2-bit hero. This video is a continuation of a series. If you'd like to know more about what the series is and how the ratings work, feel free to check out the first video on the grappling hook. Smoke grenades. These are in the firearms and explosives section of the DMG, and the text before the explosives states, the explosives table has examples of explosives. If no cost is given for an explosive, it can't typically be bought. In the 2014 edition, the smoke grenade didn't have a price and thus would not have been commonly available for purchase. But now, let's talk about how your character can be more like a movie ninja than you thought possible.
Ninja vanish!
Costs 50 gold, weighs 2 pounds. Pretty expensive, but is it worth it? As an action, you can either throw a grenade at a point up to 60 feet away, or use a grenade launcher to propel the grenade to a point up to 1,000 feet away. The grenade explodes at that point, creating a particular effect in a 20-foot radius sphere. The area of the sphere is heavily obscured by smoke for 1 minute. A strong wind, such as the gust of wind spell, disperses the smoke. I'm gonna assume in most games you're not getting a grenade launcher, so we're just gonna brush right past that part. I could have made a whole video on this, and honestly, still probably will. There are other quirks to discuss. Okay, the smoke grenade is an action, not a utilize action. So it doesn't work with the Thief Rogue's fast hands. Or does it? Now, I personally think this is literally just a mistake. I think they didn't go over the DMG explosives and didn't update many of the actions for parts of the book people probably didn't think were as important and didn't get another pass. We're gonna get into the weeds here. Join me in the texts. In the PHB, if you look at the utilize action, it states quite clearly that the utilize action is done to use a non-magical object. It later states when an object requires an action to use, you take the utilize action. I think that's pretty buttoned up. The smoke grenade is adventuring gear, a non-magical object, and it requires an action. Remember, when an object requires an action for its use, you take the utilize action. I certainly count this as a utilize action in my games. I would recommend that you do the same. To argue against myself for a moment, the book does have a few fringe cases where you very confusingly use a utilize action to use a magical item. The dust of smoking and choking, or the dimensional shackles, for example. There's also the text that says treat them as rare magic items. Does this mean they were extremely deliberate with their use of action versus utilize action? I'm gonna say no. But you might interpret it differently. I rule that this action is in fact the utilize action. Maybe my very mild hottest take on this channel yet. It's not that hot. I mean, just wait till you hear what I think about scaling cantrips. Fog Cloud in a can. You don't need the magic initiate feat. You don't need to use up one of your few spell slots in whatever class you are. You don't need to avoid this because you're concentrating on something else. All you need is 50 gold and somewhere to shop. Fog Cloud is a complicated spell for such a simple spell. 20-foot radius is no joke. This is a very significant area of effect. Everything inside the smoke is heavily obscured, which means you have no line of sight. That means you have disadvantage on your attacks because your target is unseen, but it also means you have advantage on your attacks because you are an unseen attacker. Flat rolls. I know that may seem unintuitive, but that's what it is. There are exceptions. Let's say you have blind sight or tremor sense or something. Those can eliminate the disadvantage in many situations and give you a serious leg up. It can also be nice if you have some other constant source of disadvantage. Say you have the poison condition. That makes the rolls flat. You don't stack up how many advantages versus disadvantages there are. The other thing that I think people get mixed up on is that being unseen does not mean hidden. You can't throw this at your feet and vanish like Batman. unless you have a way to hide action on the same turn. You can throw this at your feet and walk away without an opportunity attack. You do need to be able to see somebody to take an opportunity attack. You still know where people are inside of it. You know what square they're in unless they take the hide action and succeed on their checks. I believe that also applies to the invisibility spells, by the way, which I know is extra confusing and possibly even a hot take with the way the 2024 hide rules are written. A topic for another time, subscribe or whatever. Because this is an item, you don't have to concentrate on it, which is great. But because you're not concentrating on it, if the fog cloud starts to become more of a hindrance than an advantage, you can't get rid of it easily, at least not without a strong wind. My personal favorite thing about this item is that it is very disruptive to spellcasters. Line of sight matters quite a bit for a lot of magic, and creatures are functionally blind within a heavily obscured area. So any spell with a target you can see in its description is not available while they're inside or while you're inside, and is not available if they would need to look beyond the location of the heavily obscured area. But what about spell scrolls? You could craft a fog cloud spell scroll as long as you have proficiency in the Arcana skill or with calligraphy supplies and have the spell prepared on each day with the inscription. The spell scroll costs less to craft than buying a smoke grenade, but crafting spell scrolls takes time and requires the spell to be on your spell list. Then you can cast it without material components, which Fog Cloud actually doesn't have, by the way. You could also just buy a Fog Cloud spell scroll. Most of my games don't have spell scrolls at every random shop, but this is something you could probably buy. You still have all the limitations that exist with using spell scrolls, unless you're a level 13 or higher thief rogue. But all of that takes a lot more than just saying, hey DM, is there a shop nearby? And then you just buy a smoke grenade and you don't have to worry about any of that. The last smoke grenade consideration, and definitely the biggest one, does your party want there to be a smoke cloud? I did mention earlier the cloud is disruptive to spellcasters, like the ones in your party. It's also a bit annoying if you're a barbarian and you want to benefit from your reckless attacks. And it's also annoying if. Talk to the other players. And if they think that's metagaming, talk to their characters. Hey, Hogroth, Shadow Melder, Bob T. Builder, would it mess up your tactics if there were an area where no one could see anything? Just have that conversation. Be considerate. Don't annoy your party. My man Ziggy was in trouble. Our crew and about a dozen local wardens are fighting on the side of what would likely become an important force of power in our world. A big ol' airship with lots of big ol' airship guns. Our team is going to face off with a larger crew who is already inside manning some of the guns, and they knew we were coming. Their biggest threat, by far, was the spellcaster known as the Sphinx. This mage is dangerous, a threat level that our party would have run from on their own. We get fooled with a major image at the start of the fight, and then the Sphinx blasts many of our wardens with their powerful magic, retreating at the end of their turn by flying up to the third floor of the ship, which is also where the guns are, which are shooting the wardens as well. Ziggy knows this is a problem. The Sphinx can pop out, blast some fools, and then just float right on back, never really in much danger. Well, guess what Ziggy has? It's a smoke grenade. This would be a really weird video if he didn't have a smoke grenade. I need to put a stop to this tactic. I throw the grenade up to the third floor and create a big cloud of smoke, big enough where the Sphinx is going to have to come further out to cast their spells. And none of the crew on the upper deck will have any idea what's going on. All those airship guns, now they're firing at disadvantage from the smoke. This worked marvelously, but eventually the Sphinx retreated into where the smoke was for their own safety. I mentioned before, blind sight, it's good in the smoke. Ziggy took the Skulker feat at level 4. The Skulker feat rules. It allows me to see inside the smoke. I walk within 10 feet of the Sphinx who can't see me, and do I prepare my dagger for a sneak attack and deal big damage? No, I throw a net on him and I slap some manacles on top of that. Thief rogue, baby, I can do anything. Note, at our table, we rule that putting manacles on prevents somatic spell components, so that ain't bad. It forces the mage to retreat. That's a huge success for our group, a massive tide changer that all started with a simple smoke grenade. This combat was also the craziest thief rogue proof of concept combat to ever happen, by the way. I wrote down everything that happened turn by turn after the fight. I might make a video just going over it at some point. It was awesome. Ultimately, I think the smoke grenade is a change the tide of battle type item. You control where it goes, which allows you to be able to conceal your position or eliminate a retreat angle or many other things. This is quite a bit of area to control. You can do a lot with this. For the Thief Rogue, assuming you can use the utilize action, which is what we are assuming, I give this 5 stars. This thing rules. For a non-Thief Rogue, I give it 3 stars. Still a lot of area to control, but being able to use it as a bonus action does make it quite a bit better for your average everyday use. The non-Thief Rogues would get a lot of mileage out of this to kick off a combat, for example, but it's just a lot of action economy once the enemies are actually doing things. If your party does not want an area where nobody can see anything, 0 stars, negative 500 stars. Do not irritate your fellow players, okay? Be cool. We were off book. We talked about rules interpretations. I gave hot takes. This video had it all. If you made it through to the outro, click like, subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy all the Mundane Item series videos. Smoke grenades are awesome. Do you want to be like Batman? Well, smoke grenades. Also, I'm gonna make a video showing off a real Batman build, and he's gonna have smoke grenades and a ton of other mundane items. Keep an eye on the channel for some planned builds in the future. I will say, your opinion of the Fog Cloud spell is probably gonna be your opinion of this item. If you don't like Fog Cloud, the smoke grenade ain't for you. If you do like Fog Cloud, you're gonna like the smoke grenade, just like I do. Thanks everyone for watching. Do good, be good. Bye.